Welcome to episode 8 of the Pera's Playbook podcast. I almost said my other podcast name. I have two podcasts and I almost said the Twig Snapper podcast, but we're not going to talk about hockey today. We're going to talk about track. And my guest is Grace Furlong. She just graduated from George Mason University, where she competed Division I level. But we have lots of other stuff to talk about. So we might as well go way back into the beginning to you were born in Ireland.
Yes,
Did you grow up in Ireland as a kid all the way through?
all the way through. I lived there basically till I was about 22. And then decided to come to the US, but that is fast tracking that whole thing.
Yeah, right. I expected your accent to be a little bit thicker.
Everyone tells me that over here. I think I can pick up accents pretty well, so I start
Yeah.
to blend in with everyone in America, but although there's a lot of different dialects in America, so
Right,
um,
yeah. If you're in the north or if you're in the south, and then you've got people from all over the world. It's
exactly. It's a real melting pot. But yeah, I've been told that, which is kind of good, so I can kind of disguise myself,
yeah.
which is
Yeah.
too. So
Right.
we
You blend right in.
yeah, exactly. But it's so funny when I talk to Irish people, even if it's on the phone, people say it immediately starts to come back. So I'm a bit fake. I can blend in wherever.
So, growing up in Ireland, I guess Irish schools, do you guys have just like normal sports? I know in Europe there's a lot of club sports, so they're not school sponsored. Is that what you had?
So yeah, it's definitely a heavier club scene. There wasn't really like in our version of high school, so secondary school. I remember having to approach the teachers. I went to quite a small secondary school and saying, "Hey, I'd really like to do I think it was like the county championships or something like that." And I had to almost kind of fight my way in a bit because it required one of the teachers to take a day off to bring us. We had to order uniforms. So I remember like kind of asking for that. But I got into sports slightly later. I got into track and field when I was about 14 and then didn't really start competing till I was 15. So I was kind of already halfway through secondary school before I was like, can I start attending these things? But no, my school were great and they gave in and they let me go. So there was only really one series of competitions as well that happened at the end of May. And it was a qualifying system. So I think there was like you had to go to counties, then you had to go to like the South provincials, then the full provincials, and then eventually if you got through, you would go to nationals, and this would happen like every 2 weeks. So unfortunately for some people, there would just be one competition in a year, which is it's very limiting, especially when you're trying to introduce young people to the sport. But I was really lucky that I was able to qualify through every time. So I got a number of competitions in the season.
Yeah, that's really, really difficult. Like
Yeah.
for me, we in middle school, well, what we called like middle school, seventh through eighth grade. So when you're like, I'm trying to think of the age, you'd be like 13, 14, I guess, in middle school. We had like 4 meets a year for track. And then by the time you were, getting into high school, I think we usually had 8 to 10 meets
Oh,
a
wow.
season. So to only have, and like almost everyone was guaranteed at least, 8 of those meets. There were a couple selective ones, and then we'd have like our finals or like our regional meet and then our finals or whatever that you could qualify for. So only having like one guaranteed competition just seems so mind-boggling to me.
I know it is. It's just there's so little emphasis put on it, especially like I think in Ireland in particular, as opposed to like the rest of Europe, because there's such a focus put on like Irish national sports, so like Gaelic football, hurling, I think they get a lot more attention than track does in kind of like those critical education years. So yeah, it's unfortunate because I feel like not many people know about the sport, or if they do know about the sport, it's always like cross country running. So when I tell people I'm a triple jumper as well, they're always a bit like, "What is that?"
Yeah, I feel like most of in like some of the previous world stages, different track meets or Olympics, the more successful Irish track athletes are distance runners.
Definitely. Even looking at the NCAA finals, like we have great runners, but not so much field representation, which would be nice to change, but it's a tough competition. But yeah, it is, and it's great. Like Ireland, for such a small country, I think has great representation in the longer distances as well, which I think speaks a lot to the people that are out there doing it as well, because credit to them.
Yeah, just need to get a few more field events and some sprints and have an all around track team that can compete, on the world stage.
Exactly. Such a strong force to be reckoned with then.
Yeah, exactly. Like Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish. Well, exactly. You got to
Yeah,
be
bring it to the global stage, never mind the NC.
right. Bring that logo global.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
So then after high school, secondary school, whatever you want to call it, you went to the University College Cork.
yeah,
Did they have track that you competed at like the US has at a college level?
so they had college level competitions, but again, you're going to be so disappointed. There was only like for field eventers, there was two guaranteed competitions in a year, which is really again unfortunate. So we had an indoors, which was, a novelty coming from, only representing it outdoors for schools. And then we had an outdoor championship, and there was no like qualifying rounds or anything like that. I think the university, I could be wrong, but the universities all over Ireland were capped at two people per event as well. Which also made it harder for I remember training in a group with there could have been four of us long jumpers at one point, or trying to go for long jump, and then that was always difficult because with only, two guaranteed competitions in the year, and then obviously the university is going to try and send the two people with the best distances. That meant that people, never got to qualify through in their events. So that
Yeah.
was particularly difficult, especially compared to the NCAA, where, I've obviously been in like the NCAA championships, or you've been down to, just a local meet where, everyone gets an opportunity to compete at some point.
Yeah, that's crazy. Just the like difference in the level of how much they push the sport in the US and I'm
Yeah.
sure even in Canada or Great Britain or France or some of these countries that have a little bit bigger track programs to then what you're saying where basically it's not really pushed and if you're good you've got your kind of your opportunities you can qualify through but that doesn't give other people a chance to develop really,
No,
which is
it was
hard.
really unfortunate in that sense. But some universities will have certain programs where they really push and training systems set up, and then other universities it's not as big. I suppose a sport on their kind of itinerary for the year. So, it kind of gets pushed to the background. So it is difficult in that sense. But the competitions that we did go to, they were a lot of fun. There's a great kind of social aspect to them as well, because Ireland's so small, you can't help but kind of know everyone. So
Yeah,
there was always good kind of good sportsmanship, and it was a lot of entertainment, a lot of fun.
yeah, definitely. So I was reading your George Mason bio and it was talking about stuff you had done and I was looking through your Instagram and different things and you were a three-time indoor champ. Was that at College Cork or was that at secondary school? Where were those kind of fall into the
Yeah,
timeline?
I think so for under 23 in Ireland, that category, I was really fortunate. I was able to I got all indoor and outdoor titles in the under 23 category. So that was really fantastic. Obviously, a great thing to have on my sporting resume. And again, like Ireland, it's a smaller group of athletes that will participate in the triple jump or that you'll constantly see at meets, but there, there's a lot of caliber there. There's a lot of quality. And I think there's a lot of potential as well. So it was always like really exciting and really special for me to be able to kind of keep those titles all the way through. And especially competing with the girls that I competed against, there were they became quite good friends of mine as well along the way. So it was really special. But um kind of as regards to the competition, you know, I guess like one benefit to me was 'cause you're constantly competing with these same girls, you know kind of what to expect going into them. You kinda can monitor how girls are progressing, what you might expect. So I think it always gave everyone a kind of unique edge to know exactly where the rest of the girls were in the field. So that was always, I suppose, beneficial going into it. Whereas I know when you're in the NCAA, like, you go down the road and it's a completely different group of girls you're
Oh yeah.
competing against.
And with the NCAAs, there's some meets I've noticed in certain areas where there'll be Division 2 schools and Division 1 schools there. So they're really not people that you're going to compete against, in your conference or qualifiers or any of that. But you've got to compete against them now, and you really don't know anything else. So it's kind of interesting how they can mix and match divisions through regular meets. But even just in a Division 1 sense, there's so many schools and so many competitors that it's way different than what you're describing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the great part about that is that you can really structure your season so that you know which competitions you need to peak for, where there's going to be kind of the most elite competition. And then as you go down, you can maybe take more of a rest week or treat one competition as more of a training session and things like that. So it is great to kind of have that mix. And obviously it gives a lot of people a lot of different opportunities to compete against, some really good competition. I remember I think we started our outdoor season in University of Central Florida. And going down there was like some of the best competition I've had in my entire NCAA career. So, it's really great to be exposed to that because not only it can be humbling, but it can also be, really rewarding because it really makes you
Yeah,
step up into that kind of competition.
yeah, definitely. You also had a track meet on your Instagram where you were in the Bahamas. What
Yeah.
was that for?
So I was really lucky that I had an opportunity to go visit there and I kind of looked into it when I was there and they were running track meets and anyone could enter and I was like, okay. So
Yeah,
that was really special. And it's such a small athletic scene there as well. So you can run into some really cool people. So
yeah,
that was really phenomenal. And the way they treat the sport, the way the stadiums are filled, it was just really, really special. Yeah, that was a great place to compete in, and just again, completely new environment. And I think I kind of credit, that experience with making me want to kind of see more of the track world, get a more global perspective on it, which kind of, helped me prepare for coming over to the US.
yeah. That definitely sounds really like a
Yeah.
cool scene and just something to experience and add to your list of things you've done in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like, you have those days where, it's a slog to go to the gym, it's a slog to make it to practice early. And then when I kind of put it in perspective that the amount of opportunities sport has given me, like the opportunity to come to the US in the first place it's kind of mind blowing.
Yeah. So let's go into that now. How you ended up at George Mason, especially with, you have a little bit different, track growing up than the standard athlete would when they're looking at schools to go to. And then just kind of how did you make that decision that you wanted to come to the US and run track? So I guess a couple questions or kind of how you're recruiting and yada yada yada. So however you want to go
Yeah,
through that.
absolutely. It's actually really interesting. Because I got a message from an agency, a European agency. I think it was I can't actually remember the name, but will find that before we're done. But they sent me a message on Instagram after I got a pure one indoor season, and it was super nice. Just sent me this message, sending out feelers, letting me know that like my kind of distances would be enough to gain me a scholarship to several universities in the States. And I opened the message, immediately closed it, and didn't respond for a year. So I just really didn't think that going abroad would be something that would suit me. I was very much felt like I was a home bird at the time. I've learned otherwise since, but yeah, I think I was just kind of I'd heard of people going over, and you always hear of people that go over and have really positive experiences, but then on the other end, you hear of people that have had very negative experiences and end up coming home early. So, I'd kind of gotten deterred by that, and then I had taken the year, I thought about it on occasion, but never really, taking it too seriously. And then I remember I'd been out of, so my undergrad was 3 years, and I started another master's, and I had kind of thought about it more again, and I was like, "Do you know what? I think this is something I want to do." So I reached back out to them kind of late, last minute, like late into the spring, which is typical me fashion. And I was like, "Hey, I think I want to do this." So they were really supportive, put me in touch with a lot of different schools throughout the country. And at the time, I didn't know how long I would have. Originally, I was told I only had a year of NCAA qualification. So, I was thinking like a year is something I can definitely do. Like a year anywhere is fine. So then I started looking into it some more, and I found that there was some, there's like with COVID years and things like that, there was ways to gain another year of qualification. So then I was like, okay, this opens me up to, doing a course that I really care about, because most masters in the US are 2 years. And yeah, I just started talking to some coaches in different places. Like I made a list of criteria that were kind of non-negotiable for me. Like I wanted to be somewhere near a city. I wanted to make sure that I could do a good master's, because if I was going over, I was going to get as much of my worth from it as I could. So I just kind of had this box of criteria, and I talked to some schools. A couple of schools that I took quite seriously were maybe UMass Amherst. I took Eastern Michigan quite seriously, and another school in Tennessee as well. But when I heard from George Mason, they actually reached out to me via Instagram as well. And I just knew straight away everything clicked. The coaches, they just seemed really friendly. You can hear sometimes of coaches that can be somewhat overbearing. Which, coming in as kind of an older student, I knew that I wasn't going to need that and wasn't going to appreciate that from any coaches. But the George Mason coaches were so open, so friendly. It was like having a conversation with someone I'd known for quite a while when I started talking to the head jumps coach there. So, and again, just right outside DC, East Coast, had the course that I was really passionate about. I did public administration, and being so close to DC, obviously it went kind of hand in hand. So yeah, it just ticked every box. Actually getting into the course was quite stressful, and that would be one warning I would give to anyone moving to the States, like the visa process, especially last minute like I was. It can be really stressful. Making sure that your documentation converts over. So, because I qualified out of an Irish undergrad, so a lot of my transcripts and certificates were in Latin, so I had to get those translated, and it was just a really long process of like meeting roadblock after roadblock, which was frustrating. But the coaches were really patient, and without a doubt, it was worth it. It was just, yeah, one of the best things I've decided to do.
Well, that's good that you're happy with the choice you made. Like you said, you were, a little deterred by the fact that some people had had bad experiences. So obviously that would have been in the back of your mind. Like if I go over here, I could have a bad experience, but obviously that didn't happen.
Yeah. And my family said it to me, my friends said it as well. Like, if this isn't what I want, I can come home.
Yeah.
And knowing that I had that freedom, knowing that I wasn't, tied in, especially because it wasn't like an undergrad, like a master's gives you a lot more kind of freedom, because you still have your undergrad degree if you need to kind of make a quick exit, I guess. But yeah, I think that really helped me, knowing that this was like a clear choice for me. So it meant that I just kind of went in with my eyes fully open, and luckily what I landed in was just like fantastic.
Had you been to the US at all before?
I had been when I was a kid for a trip as well, but that was to Disney World, so unfortunately no schools are quite like that. But
Yeah.
so I didn't really, you hear of some people who go over and they do trips to different universities and colleges that they're looking at. So I really went in with my kind of eyes closed, but trusting a good gut judgment, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, it's hard to go against your gut. Usually your gut is right. Whatever your gut instinct is, good or bad, usually it's right.
Well, I'll definitely be learning to trust it based off that experience.
Yeah. So you were conference champ in the long jump, second in triple jump, and then your team was A10 champs. Was that this past season, right?
Yeah, that was just a few weeks ago.
Right.
Kind of hard to believe
So
it happened, but
yeah, tell us about that, all of that excitement.
yeah, it's amazing. So we were actually up at UMass Amherst for that. So they're in our conference. And I remember our head coach giving a speech the day before saying that the women's team has never lost at Amherst. And all of us kind of looked at each other and were like, oh God.
No pressure.
Yeah, exactly. So especially because we were seeded first going into indoors, and I think things just didn't go to plan for us. There was a lot of pressure, a lot of nerves, maybe not feeling fully prepared for it. And I know for example, like me going into indoor conference, I was seeded first in long and in triple, and I think I finished fifth in long and then second in triple. So it really just not where I was hoping to be. So that kind of definitely stayed at the back of my mind going into this last conference, that I really wanted to you know bring my A game for my last opportunity. So, yeah, I think there was just a great kind of camaraderie. Our team is fantastic. I'm going to miss them so much, not being able to see them every day. There's a great understanding between us all. Like everyone is interested in every sport. We will watch the throws, we will watch the distance, and we'll watch it as keenly as someone who does it every day. Um so that was really great. So you knew that when you were competing, you're like, this is really for my team, which is such a special feeling. And yeah, I think long jump really surprised me at that conference. I knew I just have this unfortunate trait of fouling constantly in long jump. Like a day where we get one in is honestly a good day at a meet. So that had been happening to me a lot. I knew I'd been fouling, some decent jumps, like jumps, sizably over 6 meters. And I think I did it on my second last jump or last jump. I did 6:02, which felt like 7 meters, because just getting over that mark was just so important to me. I think I counted it up in that entire season. I'd done 590, something like 11 times, which was just cruel, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, so, and especially, I never trained for long jump. I decided to do it at the first indoor meet, and then I maybe did three throughout the rest of the season. Triple was always my primary goal and focus. So the fact that I came in on a triple jump scholarship, the fact that I got there in long jump is really special to me. I think that's one of my favorite titles, or my favorite wins. And then yeah, for triple jump, like George Mason killed it. We were so good. And that really goes to the girls that I train with. Every single one of them PR'd in that meet, and PR'd by a lot. Um, and I think training in such a great group like that, where we really push each other and support each other, really helps that come through on the day. But you know, like two of us qualified for NCAAs out of that meet. It was like one of the highest caliber um triple jump competitions in the conference, possibly, I don't want to say falsely, but for a very long time. So that's really special. And then all three of us topped the podium. So, and again, it's really crazy reflecting on other years. Like I think the girl who came sixth would have won it in previous years. So it really was a tough competition. So
Yeah. Wow.
obviously disappointing. Again, I was seeded first coming into it, not to take the title, but to know that my teammate got it just makes it special. Especially when we have that kind of team approach to everything. So yeah, that was amazing. And I remember sitting on the sidelines towards the end of the meet and like counting up the scores and knowing that there was one or two competitions still left to finish, and like some of the girls beside me being like, let's not talk about it, let's not even imagine that it's possible that we could win. But yeah, that was definitely really special. And it says a lot about a coaching program when you win, and you really want to do it for your coaches, want to do it for your school. I think that is kind of the epitome of a great program.
Oh yeah, definitely. Right. When you've got that pride for your school, or just your coaches, and they mean that much to you, or like you said, you want to win it for them, they're doing something right, because there's plenty of coaches that people just can't stand. They hate their coaches. They want to get out of there as soon as possible. Like, they just can't stand dealing with them. So it's nice to have a coach that you would want to do anything for. They work so hard for you. So in return, you want to win for them.
Absolutely. And I like that's something that's been really special about George Mason as well, is that kind of understanding they've had because, you're a student athlete, so you've got other aspects to your life other than just showing up for a training a couple hours a day. So the fact that the coaches were so aware of that, and it's been a very like, tricky semester for me in a lot of respects, like trying to get my visa sorted for working afterwards, trying to source a job, trying to work as a student during all of this. And my coaches just, really had my back every step of the way, which just made, coming to training all that more rewarding.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yeah. It makes it easier when your coaches have your back.
Mm.
Especially life is hard enough, trying to figure things out. But when you throw a sport on top of that, it makes it even harder. So when your coaches understand that life is hard and they
Yeah.
can kind of help you and have your back, it makes it so much easier.
Oh my God, absolutely. Like trying to navigate that ending your college career and moving into the work world is so hard. I'd like doing it in a different country, and honestly, it will make you as a person. Yeah, lots of resilience has been learned.
Yeah. So looking back at your, track career so far, do you have a favorite track memory?
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna cheat and say probably winning the conference title. Or actually, no, I'm gonna change that again. I think I should have thought this one through. I think probably getting my 1293 PR indoors. That was such a shock to kind of PR by almost half a meter in triple jump. That was really special. Unfortunately, in that same meet, the next jump I came down and tore my tendon, so it sparked like a whole semester of injury, and which finished in like an Achilles tendinopathy, which wrote me off for the rest of that college year, I guess. So, kind of having that moment, at least I knew I was going out with with a solid PR for the rest of that season. And I think, sometimes you can, dread injury too much or focus on it too much. So I try to put a really positive spin on it because it was a really difficult time. It was horrible. Trying to navigate that and figure out what was going on, and you know everything that was happening in my ankle.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's, you know, injuries, like you said, it's people, a lot of people think about it a lot and worry about it a lot. And in some sense, there's nothing you can do about it. They just kind of happen unexpectedly. But then once it does happen, it doesn't make it any easier. I guess it only made it a little bit easier if you had some success before it happened. Like you said, you knew you were going out with a good PR. Uh, if you had the worst jump of your career and then hurt yourself, it would have been a lot harder to deal with because your last jump would have been, not, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of knew I was going back for more, and honestly, it took me a full year and a half. It wasn't until kind of the end of the outdoor season just gone that I started to feel like I was getting back to the place that I had been before the injury. And even still, like it's something I have to monitor so much to make sure that it doesn't creep back in, to make sure that my Achilles stay strong, my calves stay strong. But it really, knowing that I went out, not even went out, but knowing that I took that kind of injury gap, knowing there was so much there really helped to come back to. It made it very bittersweet, but yeah, it's definitely was so critical to me to keep that positive mindset throughout it all.
Right. That's the most important thing is the mindset with everything. It really is. So in a non-track sense, what are your hobbies?
I've been trying to figure that out the last week, and I realized that I maybe don't have any. Um,
Oh, everyone's got a well, there's some things people will tell me in all of my different podcasts. And I'm like, well, I mean, that's a hobby. Like you might not really consider it, but it is, I guess, anything can be a hobby.
Yeah, and it's something I'm actually kind of excited to figure out over these next few weeks. Or however long I take off before I start to get back into it. It's kind of like navigating that side of my life that I suppose wasn't really available to me for so long. So it's definitely something I want to kind of pursue more. I've already signed up to so many sports. This summer I'm doing like an Irish sports club here, which will be like, ladies Gaelic football, and I'm doing volleyball, and I might do soccer too. So it's all these sports that I've never been really allowed to do. So now that I have that freedom, I'm like, I want to try everything. Um, so that's gonna definitely keep me going for a little while until I get back to it. But yeah, that's exciting. I'm excited to pursue some of those things that I haven't been able to. Other than that, like definitely maybe doing myself a misjustice because I love to draw and I love to paint and read and things like that. Anything
Well,
kind of
those
creative.
are good hobbies.
Yeah, yeah, there we go. Anything kind of creative is definitely something I will pursue. I'll say that though, but it's so hard to, sit down and actually give myself time to do that. I'm definitely used to racing around and doing things like that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I told myself that after college, I was going to start reading more. And it's only been a month in the real world, but I have not picked up a book once. I know it's only been a month, but so far, it's really hard to like, you've got a little bit of time or however much time after work, but I don't know if I want to spend it reading
Uh,
necessarily.
Honestly, I want to just spend it with my eyes closed. I don't want to have to look at anything. I don't want to have to do anything. I want to lie down. I need a rest after it. But yeah, it's gotten to the point for me that my friends won't lend me books anymore because they'll know that I'll just keep it on my shelf with the ambition
And
of
never
reading
read it.
so long.
Yeah.
They'll never get it back. So I better change that.
Right. Yeah. No, my grandpa would lend me books, and I feel like the same thing. A lot of them would just sit on my shelf. I'd never read them, and then I'd be like, honestly, I'm probably not going to read this, so you can just have it back. I've had it for 2 years. I didn't touch it. What's going to change?
I'm the exact same, and I'm such a sucker for it as well because I think they look so great on shelves and
Oh
decorated.
yeah.
I have so
You
many.
read the back of it, and you're like, oh man, this sounds so good. But then to take the time to actually invest yourself into a good book.
I know, but honestly, when you find a good book, it's amazing. So that's going to be my new pursuit to find something worth reading and then read it. That's a
Well, see,
hobby.
that's the thing. Once you get back into it, you're good, but it's getting yourself into the reading that's the hard part.
Oh, absolutely. You kind of have to train yourself because it does take discipline.
Yeah, it really
Maybe
does.
that's the thing good about a track background is the discipline. Maybe it'll, translate across.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what's your favorite food?
Oh my gosh. I feel like this changes on the daily. Right now, it's um I tried to bake the other day, another attempt at a new hobby. Um, so maybe the sort of half cake slash brownie thing I tried to make, that's been going down well this week. But generally pizza, it'll like you can never go wrong.
Yeah.
Pizza,
Is pizza a thing really in Ireland?
yeah, I think Irish people do food good. I think being in Europe and having access to a lot of those like cultures and cuisines and things
Yeah.
that Ireland definitely has a lot of, migrants and people that will come over and set up establishments and actually like, authentically make these food types and stuff. So I think Ireland's pretty lucky. We've got a good variety. And I think we have good produce as well. So we start the ingredients from scratch pretty well. So everything tastes pretty good. I miss bread. I miss European bread as well. That's like none other.
Are you a big fish and chips person?
Okay, I'm not a seafood person, and I don't think I ever
Wow.
could be, which is disappointing. I'm from an island, so I should
Right.
be better at
Yeah.
it. No, I'm not. And chips, it depends on. Yeah, I'm very picky when it comes to my French fries or my chips. So
'Cause I
unfortunately, no, I'd probably not go down.
yeah. I feel like that's something that people think of Ireland, they think of fish and chips. And like if I go to Ireland, I've got to have some like authentic fish and chips or
Yeah, and definitely do if you go because they're very good, so I'm told. I'm just a terrible critic of it. I'll give everything 0. Um,
yeah. Well,
that's my
I went to Ireland and I did not have fish and chips in Ireland. I had them in Wales. So
so
but
you've
it
gotta go
wasn't
back.
it was in an authentic fish, like a real fishing village. Like the fish was caught there, and then so it was still good, but I did not have it in Ireland.
You're probably not going to get better than that then. That's true.
No, no, it's like maybe if I had some authentic in Ireland, it would, but like having fish and chips in the States would not be better than having it in like a real Wales fishing village. Or
It's so true. And it's the same, like some people might hate me for saying this, but Italian American food, it's nothing on actual Italian food.
no,
Uh,
I can't. I would love to go to Italy. Like it's just like Mexican food too. Like American Mexican food, completely different
maybe there
from
they
real
have.
Mexican food.
Okay, I've never been to Mexico, so I'm probably not the
I
best
I
judge, but
haven't either, but I know that they're different.
they definitely have to be better, of course. It'd be bad if they weren't.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to like Arizona, so you're on that border, down the south, and there's a lot of more authentic Mexican food down there than the fake Mexican food that everyone calls Mexican food.
I will say the Texas Roadhouse, I had that before a meet before, and that did not go down well. But luckily I competed pretty well, so but definitely was not worth the bellyache. No, no.
Yeah, right. So, if you could travel anywhere in the world, like all expenses paid for trip for a week or two, anywhere you can go, where would you go?
I'm gonna take full advantage of this. Send me somewhere like Vietnam or Thailand or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Or
Okay.
India, somewhere very different, somewhere expensive to get to as well. Yeah, I think that would be really cool. I would love to do kind of like an Asia trip, see a few
Yeah,
countries, do something like that. I think it's just like experiencing a culture that's so different, because people
right,
say moving to the US is a big culture shock, and it is in so many respects, but at the same time, everyone speaks English.
right, right.
Everyone
Everyone who's from a different culture still speaks English. Like it's, yeah,
I see a lot of the same chains, I see a lot of the same stuff, so it's definitely different. Some of which I'm still navigating, of course, but going somewhere like that I think would be really cool. And just yeah, I think it's beautiful places to see as
yeah.
well.
I didn't even think about how that answer could be different. Like when I'm asking them at, people born in the US, we all like, I feel like everyone's like, we want to go somewhere in Europe. But like you grew up in Europe, and maybe not as easy in Ireland because you're an island, but other European countries, super easy to travel between countries because they're all smaller than like the US and they're all so close. But like for us in the US, it's like, oh yeah, we want to go to Europe. But if you're in Europe, like you can easily
Yeah.
travel there. So
Yeah, we go to other countries like they're different states. It's
right, yeah,
really
it's
lucky,
it's really
especially
crazy.
yeah, like the way the European Union operates. Like I really wasn't expecting it coming to the US, like just the depth of documentation I was going to need. But yeah, just the ability to hop on a really cheap Ryanair flight and go to, France for a weekend or kind of anywhere, getting those kind of package holidays. I really miss it. I'm not gonna lie. It's a really special part of being from Europe.
I was surprised you were saying like documentation at the lack of security in entering. Like, so we started in Ireland. We were there for like 5 nights, I think, and then we ferried over to Wales. And when we got to Wales, I feel like at the port or the ferry where we were, like there was like two whole security guards I saw. We just like walked in the country, like, come on in, and we hopped on our bus and off we went through Wales. It was
No, it is kind of amazing because I've actually done that ferry ride before. Me and my friend, she lives in London, so we took a bus from like the south of Ireland, got a ferry across, and then drove up to London. Never ever again will I do that to myself, but it was definitely an experience. And yeah, no border security, nothing. I think because Ireland has a common travel area with the UK. So once you can kind of get approval to get into Ireland or, approval to get into the UK, you can go between pretty easily. They're not super strict on it.
right. It's not like going between the US and Canada where there's like, big you got different like tolls, and you got to show your passports, and like security all over the place, and it's a big mess. No, you just kind of walk on in.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it is a really lucky feature. I definitely miss that. I definitely wish things were a little bit easier to travel over here. Yeah, even my like I remember I had to transit through the US before and having to get my ESTA and just the depth of questions. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, it is definitely my forewarning to anyone coming to the US is to just make sure everything is in order and do it with plenty of time because it will be stressful.
Yeah, right, I'm sure. Yeah. So let's see here. Here's a question I was thinking of a little while ago. You know, I know a lot of music in the US kind of dominates the world stage. Obviously, there's various artists in other countries that are only popular there that aren't popular here, but I feel like US music is kind of popular all over the place. You look at like different countries' charts on Spotify, and you're like, oh, okay, Morgan Wallen is popular there too, or like whatever. Pick your artist who's like super hot right now, and they'll be in the charts mixed in with other stuff. So in Ireland, growing up as a kid, what did you guys primarily listen to? I mean, are there like Irish pop stars, or was it like US and Canadian groups that are kind of bigger?
Yeah, I think to be honest, the way Ireland is kind of like sandwiched between the UK and the US, we just get like kind of the crossover of the two.
Yeah,
So UK artists are huge in Ireland,
right.
kind of like any artist that's big in the UK is going to also be reaching the charts in Ireland. But I think Ireland is so lucky that we have such a depth of musicians and musical quality. Like you'll hear of Irish artists that are on the global stage constantly, like Hosier is up there. Of course, now I'm forgetting every single Irish artist, but like we've had great bands, we've had people like you too that have dominated globally. So I think Ireland is really lucky, and I think Ireland does a great job of promoting artists. Um, and there's a lot of support structures there for them. Local radio is really big on promoting local music and getting them to the national level and even international level when possible. But definitely, US artists always dominated. When I was kind of younger, it was always people like Rihanna or Avril Lavigne when I was kind of like a young preteen. So they were like the people that you had to listen to and things like that. And then of course I went through the horrible stage of High School Musical was all I listened to. So apologies to my family. So yeah, it definitely has such a huge hold. And I think as well because the cultures are so similar, in a lot of respects that it's easily transferred. The languages are the same. Generally, people will listen to the same styles and types of music and stuff. So it's easy to float across.
So do people listen to like, I don't know, maybe it's too old for you, but the Irish Rovers or like stuff like that in Ireland?
Yes, definitely, especially when in my undergrad, because that's kind of more a kind of rural destination. I know a lot of people say Cork City isn't rural, but compared to Dublin or some places on the East Coast, so a lot of people will listen to like great Irish trad. A lot of people in the US I've heard play it as well, which is, great. But that's still definitely got a good hold, especially in kind of more rural Ireland. Country music and kind of more folk will definitely feature a lot in more of the like clubs, of more bars, places like that, pubs and things. Which is great because I think Ireland has a great music scene.
Yeah. Yeah, people love Irish music in the US. I mean, there's in the summers, various cities, there's big Irish festivals with Irish beer and Irish music and like the whole works. And I went to some when I was a kid, so obviously I couldn't drink the beer, but like they were always fun to go to for the music of,
You gotta
different.
tell me where these are. I want to go. I feel
Well,
like
I
I
don't
have.
well, I know Milwaukee's got a big Irish fest usually every summer.
Oh,
Um, and Oshkosh, Wisconsin used to have one that we would go to. I don't even know if they have one anymore. But it was a really cool spot with like an outdoor amphitheater on the Fox River in Wisconsin, and like this, and they'd get like smaller Irish bands, but then like they'd always kind of have, I don't know if you've heard of, if you know Gaelic Storm.
oh, I
Um
really do.
okay, so they're like they're pretty big, I feel like, in like Irish music. They were actually in Titanic. They
Oh, wow.
played in like the Titanic set when they're all dancing, that the that scene in the movie where everyone's dancing under the whatever. That's Gaelic Storm, this band is the one on the ships. Like that's, I guess, their little first claim to fame is they were the band in Titanic.
I'm
But
gonna look that up. That's really cool.
yeah,
I had no idea. Yeah, I know. I feel like I had COVID the first year I came over. So I missed St. Patrick's Day then, and then we were away at a meet for the next St. Patrick's Day. So I would love to experience a really authentic US St. Patrick's Day, if authentic goes
yeah,
in that sentence, I guess. But yeah, I think that's definitely on my priority list.
yeah, they're fun. I'd love to go to one now that I'm an adult, opposed to going to one as a kid. But you should definitely look up Gaelic Storm. They've got a lot of good music. Um,
Oh,
they're usually on like the kind of global, like, I don't know, there's like a different chart for whatever that kind of genre of music. Um, but yeah, they're pretty good, so you have to look them up. Um, so how about we end on what's next? And I mean that more like, I know you're working, graduated, but in a track sense. So is there opportunity to try and compete for Ireland at a national level? Like different world track meets, Olympics, blah blah blah, down the line. Is that something you want to do? Is that an option? You want nothing to do with it and you're ready to retire? What's next?
there's definitely something next for me. I don't think after my first working week, I'm like, I miss it so much already. There's definitely more I want to do with it. I think I'm gonna take, whether it's a couple weeks, whether it's the full summer to really decompress, because anyone who comes to the US from Ireland, and it's a very different scene. There's a lot more intensity, there's a lot more training, there's a lot more, grouped competition. So it does take its toll. It is tiring. So I'm excited to kind of decompress from all of that, but I definitely want to get back into it. I've talked to my coaches kind of both in Ireland and, at George Mason, and we all seem to agree that there's definitely more there. There's definitely more we want to pursue. I'm kind of caught because I was always primarily a triple jumper, and now I've seen like great gains in long jump when I don't want to say I haven't been trying, but it's definitely not been my focus. So I would love to push out more there, and see what's available. In terms of competing for Ireland, I think, unfortunately for the field events, there isn't a huge amount of opportunity until you get to that kind of European world standard. Um, for Ireland, it's, the distances to qualify for those are harder than a lot of other countries because there's not many of us, and if you want to go, you really got to prove yourself. But I think there's definitely, like, there's European teams, there's things like that coming up that I definitely am keeping on my radar, um, and seeing kind of like how far I can go. I think a great thing about Europe as well is there's so many meets, across the continent that great athletes will attend. You don't necessarily need a qualifying mark. You might just have to have a certain distance, but as in, a good PR, but you don't necessarily need to reach a mark prior to it and things like that. So that's definitely something I want to keep going. But I think, I always get kind of scared when I think about, I want to reach, Europeans, or I want to get to this level or this level. I think for me, a goal is to just kind of better my PRs. And I think that that's gonna hopefully bring about some good competition in and of itself. That's where I really want to push things.
Yeah, well, that's a good goal to have. I mean, that's kind of what you want in track, is to just keep PRing, and then you can see where it takes you. I mean, you don't have to set a huge, big, giant goal. I mean, if you get to that goal, that's awesome. But I mean, you can work your way there slowly and just kind of set little goals. And sometimes it's better to check off little goals than like, oh, I'm only halfway to this giant goal. It feels like I'm never going to get there. But like, if you get to check off little goals, it's like, oh, look at me, I'm making progress. And
It's so true. And I think athletes tend to put a lot of pressure on themselves because you see it at the NCAAs. The standard is always changing. What it takes to get to nationals, one year is completely different to what it takes to get to the next. And then athletes hold themselves accountable to those distances when in reality it's often just luck. So I think setting a goal like that where you reach a certain competition is fantastic, but also I think bearing in mind just achieving your own personal distances and things like that should matter more because these things are really superficial and can be so fickle sometimes. I think qualifying to East prelims this year, took distances that have never been seen before in both long and triple jump. I think it was almost in every event. Um, so it just really shows that these things change and trends change as well. So it's not to beat yourself too much up too much if it, doesn't work in your favor sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I think that's definitely a well put and a good way, good mindset to have about it in a
Yeah.
track sense, especially. I mean, maybe for other sports, like the pinnacle, the whole end all be all is just like winning a national championship and and other NCAA sports. But in track, it is more about the PR and like that personal growth, and it's definitely a team sport in a lot of sense, but in the end of the day, you are competing, unless you're on a relay, you're just competing as yourself, doing the best you can. You have teammates, you have support, you're all working to win meets and stuff, but you're working at these goals, on your own. So it's really, if you're PRing, if you're beating your own goals, that's what really matters. You're showing improvement. Maybe like you said, putting that big goal of winning NCAAs or whatever, especially like you said, that stuff's always changing. So it's really about how you look at it. And if you look at it one way, it can make it a lot easier for yourself, to not beat yourself up.
Yeah, and like I say all that, and of course I come back from meets and I'll be like my harshest critic, and I of course want more, and I always want more, but I think that's every athlete ever. So we're never
Yeah.
gonna be happy.
It's
Um,
hard to practice what you preach.
yeah, absolutely, it really is. But I am definitely a critic of myself. I'm definitely, I'll come back and I'll even PR and I'll be like, but why wasn't it further? So it is hard to silence that voice sometimes, but I think you just got to keep the perspective pretty clear, which is something I try to do. And, everyone feels like that at times. Everyone wants more and beats themselves up about it. But, that's sport. I try to put a perspective on it that I've done so much already with it that I can't be too unhappy.
Right. Yeah. I agree with you 100%. And I think it's great kind of advice, whether it's easy advice to take or, it's hard because you can listen to this and be like, yeah, it's easier said than done to not beat yourself up. And that's true with anything in life. Like you can say, oh, I really want to do this. And then when you don't do it, you beat yourself up over it, whether it's sports, whether it's just something in your personal life, whatever it is, it's really hard to not be your biggest critic. I mean, we're so hard on ourselves, and I don't know if that's because of just like society and the way the world kind of seems like it wants perfection with everything. And that's really not going to happen. I mean, you can't be perfect but we all want to be perfect. And we really treat ourselves harshly when we're not.
Yeah, absolutely. I think society full stop is just obsessed with growth, whether it's like, capital or it's job progression, whether it's distances in track. And field, like it's obsession with this like exponential growth, which anyone will tell you is unrealistic. There has to be stagnancies, there has to be drops. Um, so it is a difficult one to navigate, and I think it applies to all aspects of life. It's hard to be content sometimes with these things, but you know, it is what it is, and everyone's kind of human at the end of the day. So it's not always going to be in your favor.
Right. And in the end of the day, you just got to treat yourself with kindness and you got to respect yourself. And, it's never going to help to beat yourself up. That's not going to help you improve. That's actually going to make it worse. When you beat yourself up, you tear yourself down, you're not going to take that step forward. It's going to be harder. So,
Yeah, and I think I'm so fortunate, that the kind of perspective I had from my coaches growing up, from my family, from my peers, I guess, was that sport and my body allowed me to achieve these great things. Whereas unfortunately, you do hear of stories where people kind of turn on themselves a little bit, whether it's through, not nourishing themselves enough and kind of eating disorders that can develop in sports and things like that. Which is, such a slippery slope and such a thing to be careful of. But I think constantly reminding yourself everything that your body does and, not being too harsh on it is so critical.
Yeah. And I think, in today's world, sports are at the forefront of everything, especially at the high levels, the professional levels, with doesn't matter what sporting league you're in, whether it's soccer in Europe or the NFL in the US, any level of sport, once you get up there, perfection is just that's all they want. They want perfect. And if you can't meet the standard, they boot you out and it tears athletes apart. I mean, there's so many pro athletes that are now starting to come out with mental health issues and different things. Well, it's really, you can't be surprised that there is a mental health crisis within athletes with what's expected of them. It's so hard.
We're all pushing towards that one goal. Like, am I correct in saying for hockey it's the Stanley Cup? Am I right?
Yes.
Yes, okay,
Yes.
amazing. I've seen a couple of Caps games. Obsessed. So good. Um, so like whether it's going for something like the Stanley Cup or going for a European standard, everyone is going for that. And then you compare it to other industries, and even if you look at, singers, like we were just discussing, there's so many genres and so many people that are interested in different types that you can be as successful as the next person. You're not a winner, you're not a loser. There
Hmm.
can essentially ties. But sport is the one industry where it's like they like to they like to order people, they like to stack people based on how good you are. And you can very much see who is ahead of you, who's behind you. And that's something, which can be a blessing and a curse because, it's great to see distances and really reaffirm like, oh yeah, my training's paying off. But at the same time, it can really make you feel terrible about yourself when you work hard and the distances don't add up. And it's very much
Yeah.
evidence on paper. It's on paper that you're not good enough, or it's on paper that you're good enough, or like that's difficult.
And the money aspect now is so huge too. It's all a business. And in some senses, there's different organizations that are run poorly where it's really all about the money. They don't care about the athlete. So the athlete's just a pawn in the chessboard they're just being used to get a profit. And that's obviously not good because then you're not valued and that if you don't perform, you're going to get cut or whatever it is. So that's another just mental headache to add to the list. Um, it's really crazy how
Yeah,
you
absolutely. And to
know.
kind of go full circle on that, like that was something I was really aware of when I was looking at schools in the US as well. I didn't want to go somewhere where I'd feel like constant pressure and this need to win every meet or to achieve certain distances because I'm just not someone who responds well to that. Every coach of mine knows that. I'm someone who is determined enough in their own right and wants to do it for themselves enough that you don't need to apply that extra pressure to me. It's already there.
Yeah. And it's okay to set high standards as a program or as an organization, but they have to be realistic and you have to understand that people are going to have bad days. People are going to have bad years. I mean, sometimes you just don't perform as well as you want to because, well, let's face it, as much as people say hockey is life or track is life, there are other aspects to life that will affect your athletics. So you might have a down year. Um, so if you have high standards as a coach or as a team, you have to understand that just because they're not met doesn't mean that that person's like a bad athlete. I mean, they could have just had a bad day and then, one bad performance doesn't shouldn't tank your whole career.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you see it, like there was a girl on my team this year who really, blew it out of the water at conference. And, people kind of said, not people said as such, but, it was known that her distances were a certain level and she was trying to creep over that level, and then, nobody expected it, blew it out of the water, one triple jump, did phenomenal, like, and they're the stories you love to see when people, can really surprise you, when people really pull it off, when their training pays off, when they work hard. And that's the other kind of flip side to that of sport. Like, you know, there's like, I'm gonna butcher the saying, but it's like you don't need to feel good to perform good. And I love those days when you can surprise yourself as well.
Yeah, and it does, and then it feels really good when you do surprise yourself.
Absolutely. I think that's why everyone does it. That's the feeling you strive for, isn't it?
Right, yeah, you like, "Oh, I really wanna just shave off a few seconds," and, then you run and you shave off, like, 20 seconds, you're like, "Wow," or like, I just wanna jump what I've been jumping," and then you jump, like, a whole bunch extra, you're like, "Wow, look at me, like, I just blew that, like, I wasn't expecting that." It feels so much better when you're not expecting it than, like, when you do what you expect.
Yeah. Or when you even when you kind of know it's there and you keep just missing, and then you get it. Great feeling too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's what it's all about. It's what it's all about. It makes it worth it in the end.
So true.
Well, thank you very much for joining me. Very interesting talking about kind of the difference in sports between like Ireland and the US, and just I mean European sports are different in kind of overall, but a smaller country to a country like the US is just really incredible, the differences. So thanks for coming on and sharing your story and everything else. It was a good time.
Thank you so much. No problem.